Hearing of Governor's Council to order on the nomination of Courtney Price to the position of Clerk Magistrate of Leominster District Court. I'll first read a letter from the Governor into the record. Dear Councilors, I'm pleased to nominate Courtney Price to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Leominster District Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Sincerely, Charles D. Baker. And I want to introduce my colleagues on the council, Councilor Bob Juneville, Councilor Marilyn Devaney, Councilor Terry Kennedy, Councilor Eileen Duff, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, so that's
Yes, and to Councilor Eileen Duff, I lost my place, Councilor Joe Ferreira, Councilor Mary Hurley, and Councilor Iannella will be joining us shortly. So with that, we can call the nominees witnesses, and I have first the Honorable Justice Daniel Wren, Regional Administrative Justice of the Worcester Superior Court. Good morning, sir.
So, good morning. When I wear my mask, I have to keep my glasses up because they fog up. We've gotten used to different norms that we have to account for. First, to the councilors, thank you for this opportunity to appear before you. When we were driving in today, I reminisced with Courtney that it was almost 10 years ago to the day that I appeared before this board for nomination of the Superior Court. And again, thank you all. It's been a great 10 years. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I today appreciate your vote as much as I did back then. When I was asked by Courtney to speak on her behalf, I was honored to do so. I've gotten to know Courtney both personally and professionally over the last number of years, and I think so highly of her. When I think of the position of Clerk Magistrate, I think of someone who needs to have strong interpersonal skills and strong organizational skills. And I will tell you, in my experience with Courtney, she has both of those qualities in great number. It's often easy to forget that life can be hard. Courtney's adult life has been difficult. She has been faced with challenges that none of us would take on voluntarily. She's been faced with challenges that many folks would wilt under, but she did not. She is a strong mother, a strong professional, and I had the privilege of witnessing it firsthand with a front seat view. Courtney was an assistant district attorney who appeared in front of me regularly. She had a busy Superior Court docket that she was responsible for. She was never late, always prepared, and always professional, both to her colleagues, to defense counsel, to the judiciary. But more importantly, Courtney was friendly, upbeat, and professional to everybody that came through that courthouse door, from the janitorial staff right up. I never heard anyone say a negative word about Courtney's presentation and demeanor. Courtney in 2017 transitioned to the position of assistant clerk. She was a session clerk in the Superior Court, and I had the good fortune and privilege of working with her many times as my session clerk. In my present role as Regional Administrative Justice, when I need to liaison with the District Attorney's Office or the Criminal Bar or the Bar Association generally, my go-to person is Courtney. The only negative I can say to you about Courtney's new position is she's leaving me. Courtney has the personal acumen and skill to navigate and liaison like no one else I've met. When I asked her to set up a meeting to get the feel of what the bar's looking for in terms of a presentation, I, without fail, get good info, and she does it flawlessly. As I think about the times that I've had Courtney as a session clerk, the thing that sticks out to me when you're running a session, whether it be a busy criminal first session or a trial session, when you come out into that courtroom, you want the courtroom atmosphere to be open, without tension. And the session clerk has a good deal to do with that, because the session clerk, in Courtney's case, is out there before you. She runs the list, she set things up, she's interacting with lawyers, with litigants at times, she's interacting with court officers, other clerks. And again, whenever I would come into a courtroom that she was managing for me, I would enter a courtroom that was ready to go and the atmosphere was appropriate. In short, as I said at the beginning of my remarks, I will tell you that I can think of no better candidate with the interpersonal skills and the organizational skills to be a successful clerk magistrate other than Courtney Price. I offer you my full and unhesitating recommendation for the clerk magistrate of the Leominster District Court. I've completed my remarks. I'd be happy to entertain any questions if any of the counselors have any.
Thank you so much. And do any counselors have comments? We'll start with Counselor Devaney.
Well, welcome back. 10 years, huh?
Thank you.
I don't think you have been back.
I was back to speak on behalf of Judge.
Right, that's right, right. Well, as the only person here that had the pleasure and honor of voting for you, I want to tell you, I've always heard good things about you, and it was a proud vote, because we always say, you know, we don't have a crystal ball. And sometimes you vote for someone and they do something crazy and they let you down, and you never have. So I'm very proud of that. So tell me how long you've known the nominee.
So Courtney came to the Superior Court as a clerk in 2017. When I was appointed in 2011, my first 8 months were in Middlesex County out in Woburn. I came to Worcester in January of 2012. Courtney was a practicing lawyer before me at that time. I had the opportunity to have her try a number of major felony cases before me. And as I said, she would appear before me on a regular basis in the criminal first session. I really got to know Courtney personally when she became a session clerk, because then we were able to interact more closely, and it's been a wonderful relationship. I think the world of her. I look forward to having her as a session clerk in Worcester. So I would say I professionally began to know her as a practicing lawyer in 2012, and I've gotten to know her more in a better capacity since 2017.
You've said a lot of things about her, a lot of good things. Could you think of one attribute that you could apply to her right now? It comes to mind.
So when I think of Courtney, I think of the word grace. She handles herself in a graceful way. She navigates difficult circumstances with real grace. So that's the term that comes to mind when I think of Courtney.
Thank you. And I've got to tell you, after 10 years, you're looking good.
Well, I'll take that.
Thank you. Counselor Jumbo.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge, for coming in. Lucky I have seen you now 2 days in a row.
There's got to be something to that, but I don't know. what
Yeah,
it is.
well, hopefully it continues. So my concern is, do you think she's overqualified for this job?
No, I do not.
I was thinking we could maybe make her the clerk of the Supreme Judicial Court rather than.
So
District Court.
as a lowly sitting trial court judge, I don't get to make those judgments.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. I was fortunate enough to have a case with her in the DA's office, and it was a pleasure working with her. She was so professional. It was a difficult case too. So she's been a great clerk. She's my go-to person too in the clerk's office.
As
She
it
gets
should.
things done.
Right.
Thank you for coming in. I appreciate your testimony. It means a lot to me.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kennedy.
Good to see you, Judge. I'm pretty sure that Councilor Devaney wasn't the only one that voted for you. I think I might have.
It's been my practice not to correct any counselor.
But it was obviously a good vote. You have a great reputation out there. You're very, very fair with everybody, and our comments mean a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any of the counselors joining us remotely have any comments or questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Sorry. Oh, thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay, next we have John F. Kennedy, Clerk Magistrate of Uxbridge District Court, joining us.
Morning, members of the council.
Good morning.
I'm here to speak on behalf of Ms. Courtney Price. I've known Ms. Price for some 10 years when she first started in the Middle District Attorney's Office, where I was also a district attorney, assistant district attorney. We worked for many years on a daily basis out in East Brookfield Court, where I was assigned. She was assigned to the sexual assault unit out there. I can tell you from my firsthand experience of working with her, she has a unique blend of always prepared for her cases, down-to-earth personality that she had no issues whatsoever with the local bar, the jurists, the public, victims, police, easygoing personality. She's someone that I can say without hesitation is someone who's prepared, doesn't overlook any details, true professional. I had the opportunity, going back a few years, to sit on a panel for the interview process of an assistant clerk magistrate in Superior Court, where there were 36 highly qualified applicants. There were 3 panelists, and I was one of the panelists. And I can say that she clearly rose above all the other applicants. She was prepared. She knew the law, knew procedures of the Superior Court. She was detailed in her responses to the questions put before her. Thought she has the ability to think quickly on her feet on whatever questions or issues that are presented to her. I worked out in Leominster District Court for several years prior to becoming an assistant clerk magistrate, and now in my current position as clerk magistrate in Uxbridge District Court. I know the staff there well. I've spoken to them once I became aware that Ms. Price was going to be nominated for this position as clerk magistrate there. I can tell you without hesitation, I feel that she will make an incredible clerk magistrate. I think she'll come there, she'll work well with the staff. She, as I indicated, she's someone that does not take herself too seriously. She will not be changed by this position if she's so fortunate enough to be named clerk magistrate, but she's someone who will always come to work prepared to give 100%, to work in a harmonious and efficient way with that staff in Leominster District Court. And I'm open to take any questions from any of you.
Thank you. Any comments? Was Councilor Jumla?
Good morning.
Or you, Council?
How's everything up in Uxbridge?
Fine.
Been there a little while, but maybe we'll get back there soon. Have you been doing any jury trials out there?
We have not.
Judge trials?
Yes, in person, yes, we've been doing since August.
Yes,
Last
good.
August. Good.
So this nominee has sort of followed in your footsteps.
Yes.
DA, a great DA. I met you in Dudley Court. You're a great DA, and then assistant clerkship and a clerkship. So did you mentor her to take those steps?
I can't take any credit for that. She's blazed her own trail.
Yeah. Well, you do a wonderful job in Uxbridge, and you're a great clerk and a great guy, and thank you for coming in here.
Thank you, Council.
Kennedy?
I just want to echo what Council Jewell said. You and I had cases together over the years when you were in the DA's office. It was always a pleasure dealing with you. I may have had one with Courtney. I just don't remember. But The office, as you, when folks were there, was really well run. It still is. As good a clerk as you are following your path. Fantastic.
Thank you. Counselor Devaney.
Welcome back.
Boy,
Where's Uxbridge?
we are the gateway to
wait.
Rhode Island.
Don't give up the secret.
It's in beautiful District 7.
They might start
I,
watching
I
you,
I
Joe.
live a sheltered life. I've never been to Uxbridge, but now how long have you been? When were you?
I've been a clerk magistrate. Actually, my sister sent me a Facebook. I'm not a big Facebook individual, but she sent me,
Right, right.
it came up 7 years ago today. I was sworn in.
Well, I haven't been to Uxbridge, but I'm proud of the vote and you're doing a good job. I can't help but say, I love your name and going through life with John F. Kennedy, I'm sure that when you're talking to someone on the phone or whatever and you say you're John F. Kennedy, I'll tell you why I say that. My late sister was Grace Kelly. So I know what she went through all the time when she was at work and she called and she'd say she was Grace Kelly. And they say, yeah, okay. Yeah. But anyway, so how much, how often have you seen this nominee in the
I
court?
work with her on a day-to-day basis
Every day?
for several years,
Every day?
but I've been in constant contact with her the past 10 years.
Okay. So give me an adjective that you would describe this nominee.
And always prepared. Always prepared. I've never seen her when prosecuting a case, or I've talked to some of her colleagues in Superior Court. They say the same thing. She's always prepared, down-to-earth individual. I don't know if it's a compliment or not. I think it is, that she doesn't take herself too seriously. Relate to any individual, as Judge Wren, the previous speaker, had indicated, that she just has that ability to relate to people. I think her demeanor, perfect for this type of role in public service.
Well, I'm so glad you came in person and Judge Wren. That means a lot to me to be able to see someone and I am, you know, it's been a while and we don't get to see you people. So this is quite a tribute to the nominee to have you both come in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other counselors have questions or comments for the witness?
No, thank you.
Well, we appreciate you being here and coming in from beautiful Uxbridge. Anyone who hasn't been there and loves the great outdoors should check it out.
Thanks,
Blackstone River Valley. Beautiful part of the state. Okay. Thank you very much. And first, I'll just ask if there's anyone here to speak in opposition to the nominee. And there being none, would you like to introduce any guests who you've brought with you today and then offer any statement you have prepared?
Thank you very much, Councilor DiPaolo. With me today, in addition to Judge Wren and Mr. Kennedy, is Carmine Seminelli, an assistant clerk from Westboro District Court, who I've known since my first days in Fitchburg District Court, and Terry McLaughlin, who is the chief trial counsel of the DA's office and a close friend of mine for the past 10 years. And I'm so humbled and honored to be sitting before all of you today. I first want to thank Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito for, in the midst of this pandemic, taking the time to read my application, meet with me, and for having the confidence to nominate me for this esteemed position of Clerk Magistrate of the Leominster District Court. Thank you to Legal Counsel Bob Ross and Executive Director of the JNC, Lauren Green Petrino, for the time and support you have given me throughout this process. Thank you to you, the honorable members of this Governor's Council, for your consideration, for the time you spent meeting or speaking with me, and for the opportunity to address you today. Thank you to all my colleagues over the past 10 years. No one can do anything on their own, and you are all part of the reason why I'm here today. Thank you to my family, friends, and loved ones, especially my children, Allison and Ryan. While I wish they could have been here today, despite the fact that they definitely would have stolen some of my thunder, they are currently in school in kindergarten and second grade and will be much more excited to watch this on YouTube later. They both push me every day to be my best and are two of the strongest children I know. While they are no longer with us, I thank my mother, Eileen, and my husband, Patrick. Losing them was the hardest thing I've ever gone through, but it's made me stronger, and they inspired me to make them proud in everything that I do. And finally, I want to thank my father, Marty, who is hopefully watching this down in Florida. Thank you for stressing the importance of a good education and an even better work ethic. My father always worked tirelessly to make sure my mother, brother, sister, and I had everything we needed, and always made sure to show up at all of our sporting events, even when I spent most of the time on the bench. My father's advice is, in fact, a major piece of why I'm here today. He told me that if I found a job I loved, it would never feel like work. From my first day as an assistant district attorney at the Fitchburg District Court, my father's words came back to me. I loved my job, and it did not feel like work. I loved the courthouse. I loved working with the attorneys and the court personnel. I loved working for the public, helping people during the most difficult and stressful moments. And since that first day, I've been lucky to work in most of the courthouses in Worcester. And should I be fortunate enough to be confirmed, I will continue to be honored to work in that court. In preparing for today, I've thought a lot about what it takes to foster a successful clerk's office. And I always come back to the fact that you need to create a sense of community, a welcoming place where people can be helped and heard. I know that I can do that. I have done that in all aspects of my life, in my personal and my professional families, and I know that I can do that as the Clerk Magistrate of Leominster District Court. Creating a sense of community is not easy. It requires organization, motivation, adaptability, and respect. A strong clerk's office provides court users with help quickly, efficiently, and in a non-judgmental manner. A strong clerk magistrate not only implements those skills, but demonstrates them herself. I am confident that I have the skills needed to do exactly that. I first learned a great deal about organization and multitasking as the oldest of 3 children, practicing my leadership skills in my younger brother and sister, even when most of the time they didn't want me to. Throughout college, law school, and beyond, I've also waited tables and bartended at a busy restaurant in Worcester. As I sit here before you today, more than 20 years since my first shift, I am confident in saying that there is nothing that better prepares you to understand how to multitask and the value of a customer service than working in the restaurant industry. These early lessons of coordination were crucial for my job as an assistant district attorney in Worcester County. Many days I would be one of 2 prosecutors handling easily upwards of 50 cases in a busy pretrial session in either Fitchburg or Dudley district courts. On other days, I was the sole prosecutor assigned to the motion and trial session. I would need to negotiate resolutions, manage discovery, and assess the facts on cases that I might have had very little time with. I collaborated with defense counsel, probation officers, police officers, victim witness advocates, and I made sure I gave each of them my attention and respect. I was able to juggle multiple balls in the air and yet maintain my composure. While the job could be demanding and sometimes exhausting, I loved going to court every day, and so it never felt like work. I felt like I was really serving my community. In my current role as an assistant clerk magistrate, structure and preparation continue to be paramount, not only for my success, but for the attorneys, their clients, and the judges. I know that my colleagues in the office and in the bar are working through complications none of us have ever dreamed of. I also know that by ensuring I provide clear information and do it pleasantly, I can help make one part of their days a little easier. In my personal life, I've also stepped up when needed to organize and motivate my community. After the death of my husband, I was asked by his oncologist to caption my own team for the Jimmy Fund Walk. I began Team Gee I Hate Cancer to raise money for the Center for Esophageal Cancer at Esophageal and Gastric Cancer at Dana-Farber in 2017. I've organized a walk team of more than 20 people each year, walking the 26.2 miles to Boston, and even brought a walk to the streets of Worcester for a virtual walk this past fall. I've also started a memorial golf tournament in my husband's memory to help raise funds. I knew little to nothing about running a golf tournament, and even less about the game of golf itself. But I rolled up my sleeves and I sat down to figure it out. Our most recent tournament in 2019 had 32 foursomes, and to date, Gee I Hate Cancer has raised $123,404. In both of these instances, organization and motivation were keys to success. I needed to ensure that the events went smoothly, and I needed to encourage folks to give their money, time, and energy. Although it did take a lot less convincing to get people to play golf than to walk 26.2 miles. Whether I'm organizing a docket or a fundraiser, I know that structure is key, and I know that if I love what I'm doing, it is infectious and encourages other people to be a part of my team. Adaptability is also something a good leader needs to exhibit, especially in a place like the clerk's office. The courthouse is a fluid environment and can change in a moment's notice. A clerk magistrate needs to be able to adjust immediately in order to be successful. My entire adult life has been made up of my ability to adapt. Trials never go as planned, witness testimony may change with little to no notice. The entire world has had to adapt this past year, and the trial court was certainly no exceptions. Hearings became virtual, Zoom became second nature, and trial dates were ever-changing. While we had time to perfect our practice over the past 13 months, we had to make changes quickly and successfully so that the public we served continued to be treated fairly, but also safely. I took that responsibility seriously and adapted and pivoted as needed. The ability to adapt has also become a large part of my personal life as well. My husband's death was certainly a possibility after his diagnosis, but the end came much quicker than we had anticipated. I had 2 small children, a son, not yet 1, and a 3.5-year-old daughter, and I needed to adapt. I had to do what needed to be done for my children. I look at a clerk's office and a courthouse as its own family, so I know if I can adapt for my family outside of the office, I can most certainly do it for my courthouse family as well. The final component needed to create a welcoming community is respect. In each role I have had, I have done my best to be fair, considerate, and conscientious. When working in the courthouse, especially now during this crazy time of COVID, respect is crucial. Acknowledging the needs of everyone that comes into the building, making sure hearings are scheduled in a timely fashion, being aware the challenges that each department faces in these unprecedented times, and understanding the added stress or confusion delays could create for the attorney and the public are all factors that go into decision-making. I have worked hard in every position I've held to show people empathy and compassion, and I would continue to do so as clerk magistrate. I want to be the clerk magistrate so I can take all these skills I have developed in both my personal and professional lives and use them to give back to the community that has become so important to me and my family. Every night at dinner, my children and I play a game called Pits and Peaks, where we sit around the table and talk about the best parts of our day and the worst parts of our day. The night that I received this nomination, I told my children that this was my peak. My daughter Allison asked me then, if I didn't do this job and I didn't work at the courthouse, what could I do? What would I be doing? And I actually couldn't answer that question because I truly cannot imagine doing anything other than this. And if I am fortunate enough to earn your votes and am confirmed as the clerk magistrate of Leominster District Court, I know I will answer that question any number of years from now exactly the same way. There is nothing that I would rather be doing. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. And we're going to start with Counselor Jubenville with questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think you would have been a lawyer in Worcester and you would have made a ton of money because you're so good at it.
Thank you, Counselor.
Let me tell you a quick story about the importance of a clerk in the courthouse. I had a young fellow, a few years back who was finished 1 year at the Air Force Academy in Colorado. He got into a jam over the summer. He went before a clerk magistrate who didn't issue the complaint. Had it issued, he would have been not allowed to return to the Air Force Academy. He had no prior record. So he ended up going back, graduating. He now is in the Air Force flying jets, all because of a clerk. That's how important, in my view, that job is that you're going to assume. You have the power to change somebody's life, a bad way a lot of times, or a good way in a lot of times. But because this clerk gave this young man a chance, and I think he continued the case for a year and held it. And because of that clerk's kindness and faith in giving him a chance, he's now a successful person. So to me, the clerk's office is so important because you see so many people coming through for clerk's hearings. And I know you are a very compassionate individual. I know you'll use that position in a way to help as many people as you can. You know, I know clerks probably like clerks into the Commonwealth, who we mustn't forget pays for all of this, pays for salaries in our court system. So we have to treat them if we can kindly, and I know you'll do that. You and I had a case in the district court. It's where I met you. It was kind of a contentious case. And I really, really enjoyed meeting you and working with you on that case. And when you had to leave, I missed you. We got a new DA, but it wasn't you. But then when you became an assistant clerk, we discussed that. And I was so happy for you that you didn't have 50 cases to carry around every day anymore. So I think the world of you, to be honest. And I usually don't tell people how I'm going to vote, but I'm going to vote for you. And I would hope all of my counselors follow suit because you are a wonderful candidate.
Thank you very much, Counselor Jubenville.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Jubenville. Counselor Ferreira, do you have questions for the nominee?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you calling on me. I spoke to the nominee in length, and I think she's going to be a great in the new position, and I appreciate her past service to the Commonwealth, and look forward to the vote next week. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ferreira.
Thank you, Counselor Ferreira. Counselor Duff, do you have questions for the nominee?
Yeah, unmuted me. Hi. Just a couple of questions. There is no doubt that this candidate is clearly qualified for this job, and in fact has been doing so much of it already. What I did want to ask you, though, is are there any lessons from the COVID shutdown, use of technology or whatever, that you think we can continue to employ, which will help the courts run better and more smoothly
Absolutely.
going forward?
I think technology has been a huge asset over these past 13 months. It's allowed attorneys to appear in multiple courts on the same day. There are multiple times that the DAs and the defense attorneys have a hard time picking a date due to the fact that there's multiple appearances needed at multiple courts. But through the use of technology over the past 13 months, we've been able to move cases a little bit quicker than normal in the sense that attorneys can appear in multiple courts and address those matters. It also allows more of the public to be involved. People wouldn't have to take work off. They don't have to miss school. They're able to Zoom in and participate in their hearings where they may normally have some difficulty in doing so. So I think going forward, the technology has been a huge help and continue to do so in the future.
Thank you. That's what I've heard from not just attorneys, but also from the public. I mean, I know we still have glitches and we're still trying to get through some of this stuff, but it has been helpful, particularly for the public, as you said, single parents, working parents, to not have to take an entire day off from work at times to do it. What would you say you think the biggest issue facing the courts is right now and may be going forward?
I think probably the biggest issue would be people feeling safe and coming in. I think a lot of the public are uneducated about the procedures we put in place at the courthouse to make it a safe environment for everyone. So I think as soon as people are more aware that we've put precautions in, we're doing everything we can to be careful to allow people to come into the building, I think that will be beneficial to everyone.
Thank you. I don't have further questions. You and I really spoke very, very extensively about the issues I am greatly concerned about. And not only did you answer my questions well, you were very well educated on every single issue that we went into quite deep discussion on. So I'm very, very comfortable with you taking on this position. So that's all I've got. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor Duff.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Counselor Duff. Counselor Devaney.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you,
Thank
Counselor.
you for all the time you afforded me. It was really a pleasure.
It was so nice.
Now you're in the Hall of Fame.
Can't wait.
So tell me about your journey here. You applied May 2019, and tell me about you got called and you had a hearing before the Judicial Nominating Commission?
Yes, I believe I received a letter inviting me to interview with the JNC in Boston was my first step.
And when was that?
The interview was actually June 4th, because I remember it was the day before my husband's anniversary. So it was June
It was
4th,
June of
2019.
2019.
Yes.
For people who don't know, the Judicial Nominating Commission are 21 lawyers who have the awesome responsibility appointed by the governor to decide who they're going to interview, who they're going to reject, who they're going to choose, and who they're going to recommend. And then that person recommended to the governor comes to the council. So the council doesn't know how many applied for that position. We have one person before us. I like to tell that because a lot of people think that, you know, we have a list of people that we choose or something. We don't really have that authority. So, and rightfully so. How many of these 21 lawyers were there?
I believe there were 11 during my interview.
11. And again, 10 people voted, never saw the nominee, never spoke, never called for a lifetime position. And I don't say that for you because it doesn't apply to you. It just applies to the way it works up here. So having said that, I'm looking at that date, and we had a sitting governor's council that was appointed to the Dudley Court as a clerk magistrate. So you came, so you were called in after. Okay, so first of all, I have to say this. Carmine Simonelli has said such great things about you. And I don't know anyone that has been so supportive of someone in his position, probably almost a decade. He worked both jobs. He was the acting clerk magistrate and he was the assistant and he did it all, never complained. And he's still doing it. And he's so supportive. He told me that the recent people we have were great and you're great. I think that's a wonderful thing for someone who's been waiting so long. Okay. So I just want to say that you know, you really have to thank him. He is really has high regard to you. So, okay. So the other thing is I want to get it out of the way too. 40 years old, you know, and clerk magistrates, we've had them 90 years old. But I'm just saying, for me, I have a personal philosophy. I don't like to see anyone there 30 years. But, you know, there's exceptions to every rule. In meeting with you and talking with you, you are an exception. So having said that, so you've been a lawyer 10 and a half years. So I like to go back to your experience in the district attorney's office. To me, that brings a lot to the position that you hold. One of the cases, tell us about that. That was the one that got life without parole.
The murder charge?
It was your first one.
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
That was a case where I second sat the case with one of the attorneys in Worcester, and it was a shooting that took place in Worcester at a local bar. And the defendant was cousins with the victim in the case. We were unsure of what the motive was behind it, but it turned out that there was some business dealings that had kind of gone awry 7 years earlier, and it seemed as though the defendant still had a grudge over that. So we had some surveillance, we met with a significant number of witnesses, and we put the case to trial, and he was convicted and sentenced to life without parole.
Tell me, because, you know, I've always said, you know, when we read the J&C application, you don't know the rest of the story because you can't put it all in here. So I was a little confused about the rape case and that he was found not guilty, and there was kind of a little controversy in that case.
Would that be the Commonwealth versus
That was
Camilo
probably
Velez?
second, yeah.
Sure. That was actually a two co-defendant case. The cases had been severed. I was the second seat on the first case. There were two defendants and a young girl, she was early 20s, who had some mental health issues. They convinced her to pick them up at a local mall, brought her back to a residence in Worcester, went down to a local convenience store, picked up some stuff there that they had her pay for, brought her back to the apartment, and then proceeded to rape her. She ended up able to leave, reported the rape. The first defendant we went to trial with, where I was the second seat, he was found not guilty of the rape, but I believe guilty of an attempted rape and indecent assault and battery. As I mentioned, the victim had some significant mental health issues. She had a very difficult time testifying at trial, so we tried to do what we could to avoid her having to go back and retestify again. I had worked out, at this point I was the lead prosecutor, I had worked out a plea negotiation with the defense attorney for this defendant. We gave him probation after amending the charges down, and the plea went through. The defendant then wanted to transfer to Florida because he had family there and had no one in Massachusetts. So I had actually worked with the probation department to try and find a residence in Florida that would take him. We looked at hotels, we looked at local housing departments. No one was willing to accept him in Florida. So at that point, the defense counsel filed a motion to revise and revoke his sentence, his plea. We took the plea back and the case began again. I spent significant amount of time speaking with the victim, letting her know what that meant, that we would have to go forward with the trial, but kind of put it in her hands at that point if she was willing to testify. So I spent a significant amount of time working with her. We ended up going to trial. He was convicted on all charges. She was unbelievably relieved, and I believe he was sentenced to 8 to 10 years with some probation on and after.
How many jury trials have you had when you were?
In Superior Court, I would say I had 12 Superior Court trials in the period of time that I was in the Superior Court level, going to the assistant clerk position in Superior Court. And then I had jury trials in District Court as well.
Yeah. So roughly, how many cases would you say did you have when you were in that position?
Over the hundreds,
Hundreds?
yes.
I'll tell you, so it just says in the years that you've worked that you, in my experience here, this council sent someone up to the Superior Court with 6 cases to the Superior Court, and you're going to be a clerk magistrate. So that's what I like to see, that experience. So so being in the district attorney's office, how do you think that makes you a better clerk magistrate? What did you learn from that you're going to carry on as a clerk magistrate?
I think first and foremost, I learned how to interact with the public. I was working for the Commonwealth. I was dealing with pro se defendants. I was dealing with victims. I was dealing with the local bar. I think it taught me patience. It taught me how to be fair. We took an oath to make sure we were fair in the trials that we went forward with and the cases we went forward with. And I took that oath very seriously. And if I didn't believe a case should go forward, it didn't go forward. I think that was an important skill that it taught me leading up to this position as a clerk magistrate, to see the value in a case, to be fair, to work well with others, and to treat everyone as with the respect that they deserve.
You've been involved in different courses and programs, and you've spoken training courses for law enforcement. So tell me about the 51A reporting and the saying, all of those things that you were in training, especially the 51A, I'm curious about.
So with the 51As, we spoke with local police departments about the requirements of reporting if there was any instances of abuse that were brought to their attention. The 51As would be the first level. It went through DCF. And if there was enough in that report, it then kind of triggered the second report of the 51B. A lot of those 51As would trigger the SANE interviews that we took part in. That was, SANE stands for the Sexual Assault Investigation Network. So we would have an interview with a victim and a forensic interviewer in like a two-way glass. And the DCF workers, if they were involved, a prosecutor and the police officers would be on the other side of the glass. And there would be non-leading questions, open-ended questions for the victim to determine if, in fact, there was enough evidence to go forward with a sexual assault or a physical abuse case. So a lot of our trainings kind of just talked about what goes into the SANE interviews, what to be looking for, and the importance of filing the 51As.
Now, we know a clerk magistrate can't sentence, but what discretion does a clerk magistrate? What discretion will you have?
I think I have an unbelievable ability to have discretion to determine if a case should be issued right away, if there were some alternate routes that I could take. Just delaying a case, as Councilor Jubenville said, postponing a case for a year to give someone an opportunity to have a life outside of that criminal charge. I'm very aware of the impact a criminal record could have on a defendant with regards to employment, education, housing. So using my discretion in a time where they might need that second chance. They might need the opportunity to do something as opposed to just getting the charge, I think is a huge responsibility of mine as a clerk.
So you're going to the Dudley Court. What do you see needs to be improved, if you could improve those?
I don't know if I would be able to answer that right now, Councilor Devaney. I think I would, in order to determine what changes need to be made, I would need to spend some time there, see how it's run. It's been run successfully in the past, so I would want some opportunity just to see how it works from the inside. I've been in the court as a participant, but not as a member of the clerk's office. So I think it would be difficult for me to say right now what changes need to be made without me being in and seeing it from the inside.
Is there anything that can be done? You know, I always hear that everyone's there at 9 o'clock and, you know, they have to wait so long and all that. Is there any way that you can perfect that system at all?
I think we've actually done that a little bit over this past year in Superior Court. We've staggered the dates of court starting. Sometimes we'll do a 9 o'clock start, a 9:30 start, a 10 o'clock start. It does give the people the opportunity to be at the other courts and move other cases forward as well. So I think that is something that can go forward in the future. And I mean, in my experience in both the district court and the clerk's office, the courts are pretty accommodating if a lawyer is asking for a later start date.
Well, you know, as I said, I mean, you know, you haven't been 30 years, but you've packed a lot into the years that you have had. And I was very pleased. And it was such a pleasure to meet with you and for you to take all that time.
Thank you.
So,
It's my pleasure as well.
you know, I'm just happy that you got appointed, and I'm glad the governor has come through and got someone that didn't give any money to people and not political, and you don't have all your relatives on the bench. And that means a lot to me. So, you know, so I'm going to be very pleased next week to see a name come up.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Councilor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Hurley, do you have questions for the nominee?
Yes, I do. I notice in your application that you really don't have any civil experience. And one of the major jobs of a clerk magistrate or assistant clerk magistrate is to hear small claims. How are you going to handle that?
I think I mean, I know I would handle it the same way I handled stepping into the criminal world. I had no experience in the criminal world when I was hired as an assistant district attorney. I know there's multiple books that I can read about. There's educational programs I can go into. I'm very fortunate to have a number of strong mentors in the civil world. I'm not afraid to ask questions and to learn. And I know there's also an incredible staff in place at the Leominster District Court that could kind of teach me the ropes, for lack of a better term, and as I start my career there.
In Leominster?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask you about, because Councilor Devaney was talking about Dudley District Court. So, in essence, how much familiarity have you had? Have you ever done set bail as an assistant clerk?
I have not set bail as an assistant clerk, but when I was assistant district attorney, I would make bail arguments. It's not the same thing, but I did have experience asking for what I believe bail should be set at.
And what were the criteria that you used in approaching the question of bail?
There's a number of characteristics in the bail statute, but first and foremost in my mind was public safety and the importance of that. I would look at the defendant's background to see how often they showed up at court, what their criminal history consisted of, what the possible penalties were, and combining all that together, especially with the public safety, would go into my thinking process to make a bail request in court and an arraignment.
All right, and basically, are you going to do bail as a clerk?
At this time, no, Counselor. I do have 2 small children at home. My intention outside of the court day is to not be setting bail, but there are times as a clerk magistrate, if the judge were not available, that I would be required to set bail.
All right. And how did you come to coach at Western New England University?
So one of my best friends since the time I was 16 was the head women's lacrosse coach at Western New England. So after I graduated from college, she asked me if I wanted to be an assistant coach there for a year. So I did. I moved to Springfield for the year. Her and her husband had been good friends of mine, and they were both the men's and women's lacrosse coach there. So spent a year coaching, and I believe it was the next year as well. I went on spring break with them to Florida for their training trip, and I've remained close with a lot of the players till today.
All right. And you ended up going to law school in Boston as opposed, or in the eastern part of the state, as opposed to at Western New England. At that time, were you thinking about going to law school?
At Western New England, yes, I was.
But you decided to basically move back where your family was.
Yes, at that point, I was dating my husband. He was living in Worcester. I loved Worcester, and I thought that was a better fit for me.
Okay. All right. You're only 40. I wish I could say that. Unfortunately, I can't. I was on the bench for almost 20 years, and I started at 45. Do you think that you are going to be able to handle the next 25 or 30 years as the clerk magistrate?
Absolutely. I wouldn't have applied for this position if I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I obviously knew how old I was when I applied, but I think it's a job that changes every day. The players change every day. No case is exactly the same. And I just think it's a job that's ever changing and would be exciting to go to for the rest of my career, regardless of the fact that it's going to be a significant number of years. I'm actually excited about that.
And how long? Well, let me rephrase that. It's a very stressful job. You realize that. And in essence, when you're the clerk, it's not a 9 to 5 job or a 9 to 4:30 job or an 8:30 to 4:30 job. You can get involved in issuing search warrants, those kinds of things that can happen at 10 o'clock at night. You don't think that the age of your children will interfere with that at all?
No, I do not. I have an unbelievable support system. My in-laws live very close to me. Actually, for the past 5 years since my husband passed away, if my kids were sick, I didn't even have to take work off. My in-laws would pick them up and take them for the day for me. I didn't apply for the job until I felt I was able to do so. It's a position I've been interested in and excited about since I started in the DA's office. Brian DeAndrea was actually my supervisor when I started in Fitchburg, and I had known him for probably 10 years before that. And I watched as he went through the ranks as an assistant district attorney and assistant clerk, and now the clerk magistrate in Worcester. And it was always something that I admired and respected, and it was something I always wanted to do. But it's not a job I take lightly. And another reason why I didn't apply years ago when my children were still young. I have a well-established support system. My children are older. It's easy for me to tell them to go watch TV or step away while I have to take a phone call than it was when they were 1 and 3. So I wouldn't have applied for the job if I didn't think I was ready in my personal life. But I'm confident that I am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kennedy.
I don't have any questions for you. Talked to quite a bit on the phone, answered all my questions. Thing that you just seem to exude is empathy.
Can't hear you.
Excuse me. You're the person they're going to see the most. So I'm going to support you next week.
Thank you very much, Counselor Kennedy.
Counselor Iannella.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
You too, Counselor.
I don't have any questions. All my questions have already been answered. You know, you have the perfect demeanor, temperament, character. I think you're going to be a great addition to the court system. I think you're going to do a great job as clerk. Be more than happy, enthusiastically, we'll support you next week. I do want to let you know that Councilor Bob Juvenville called me on your behalf, but your biggest supporter, Councilor Paul DiPaolo. He's fully in your corner. As soon as your name you were nominated and put forward to the council, he contacted me. I wish you the best.
Thank you so much, Counselor. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Iannella. I do have just a couple questions, but we've certainly been thorough this morning. I heard a lot of things that I think speak well to your potential in this role. I heard about adaptability around what we've had to deal with COVID. I've heard about a commitment to access to justice and making folks comfortable in the courtroom. I heard about your sensitivity to mental health and to pro se litigants. So that's all great. I do want to ask a couple things. First of all, are you familiar with the Harvard study around racial disparities in our justice system?
Yes, I've reviewed it.
And so you know that the disparities, to me, the most egregious aspect is the sentencing disparities, where for similar offenses, similar backgrounds, controlling for all sorts of contextual factors, it looks like to their best conclusion was at about 28 days for Latinos and 35, I think, for Black defendants in terms of sentencing they received. And a lot of that starts, in my opinion, at the charging phase. And Councilor Juvenile was asking you about, for example, show cause hearings and things like that. How would you use, straight that, do you agree with the Harvard study?
I agree with the idea of the implicit bias, that it's an issue that we're facing. I think it's important to keep that at the forefront of our minds and to continue discussing it. I think that there's been some unbelievable opportunities within the trial court for the past year to address that, to accept it. I think I mentioned to you before that I've actually was part of an implicit bias book club in the Superior Court with the judges and the clerks to discuss the importance of recognizing that as an issue and to not letting that get in the way of our decisions.
And I appreciate your sensitivity to that. And, you know, at the moment, we can't say for sure that that's the main cause of what's happening, right? But I do appreciate that it's an important element. And I know when we spoke, you said that you're committed to making that something that's part of your decision-making and part of your process of serving with your colleagues, not just in your own. So my last question is, we have a real lack of diversity on the bench and in the clerk positions. And part of that is we need qualified folks to step up. And so I actually heard today that you're very self-driven, and so maybe this doesn't apply to you, but I think it does. We always have mentors in our lives, and I wonder if you would commit yourself to mentoring promising female attorneys and attorneys of color.
Absolutely. Well, I may be self-driven. I, again, didn't get here on my own. I've had a number of people to look up to over the past 10 years. I mentioned Brian DeAndrea has been an unbelievable support system. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. Simonelli, Judge Wren have all had a huge part in my career. So I think that's important for me to recognize. And as self-driven as I may be, I wouldn't be here without mentors. So I would 100% welcome any opportunity to mentor that someone would be interested in a position like this.
And would you prioritize mentoring those underrepresented groups that I mentioned?
Absolutely. I think it's very important for the courthouse to look like the community that we serve. I think it's important for people to come into the courthouse and recognize themselves there. So I think that's very important for me to mentor people of diverse backgrounds.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And every single person in the Worcester Bar community who I spoke to had accolades for you. Not a single reservation from anyone. So I feel very good about your nomination. Congratulations again on that. And I look forward to putting your name forward to the council at our May 5th assembly.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, counselors.
And with that, this hearing is closed.
Councilors online, please remain on the feed. The Lieutenant Governor will be down shortly for our assembly. Thank you.
Good.
Good. Go there.
Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to call upon you in about 30 seconds. Here we go.
Oh,
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
I call our assembly to order, and I'd like to start with our prayer and pledge today and ask Councilor Hurley to lead us.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to say a prayer that this COVID-19 pandemic comes to an end soon. We are thankful for all of the people who have been vaccinated. We ask all those who have not been to consider it and to help make our world a safer place in which to live and work. And most importantly, that we, as soon as possible, can get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
United
States of America and to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation, under
indivisible,
God,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and justice for all.
Okay, I recognize Councilor Ferreira for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
I love Zoom.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 I recognize Councilor Duff for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries public and justices of the peace.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And I recognize Councilor Ianella for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Paul Fulham to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Hingham District Court.
I make said motion. Thank you.
Second.
There's a motion and
Second.
a second.
Excellent, excellent choice.
May commence the roll call.
Counselor Duff,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor DePaulo,
no.
Counselor Hurley,
Yes.
Counselor Ferreira,
Yes.
Counselor Jubenville,
Yes.
Counselor Devaney,
Yes.
Counselor Ianella,
Yes.
And thank you, Councilor Hurley, for your prayer regarding COVID and the vaccination process. We have 2.4 million people totally vaccinated in our Commonwealth and 5.9 million doses administered. And we need more people to participate in that program so that we can fully reopen our Commonwealth's economy and the businesses and opportunities that are here that we love so much. So thank you.
And
That
thank
concludes
you
our meeting today.
Thank you and the
Lieutenant
governor
Governor-
for your
Lieutenant Governor.
efforts.
Before we adjourn, I take no joy in this because I write letters and it's the norm that I don't get any reply. And I'm going to continue to ask about the Atty Court, the injustice, because I've got calls from many people and I don't even know this person, but she's worked there 14 years. She was an assistant and she was the acting clerk magistrate. And when she applied, when there was an opening recently, she got a letter telling her she will not get an interview. And so I'm here for justice and I'm going to keep asking because I don't get answers to other things. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor, as I understand it, the judicial nominating committee
This is to the Lieutenant Governor, Counselor. Thank you.
Excuse me, but I would just want to have my say, and that is that the judicial nominating committee is not within the purview of the governor or lieutenant governor as it relates to their decision-making process. That's their job. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.